Hello and welcome to part 1 of designing trendy neon 80s graphics with Sapphire. My name is Brownlee from Boris FX. We're going to be starting from nothing and slowly building up a series of motion graphics that end up looking a little bit like this. Nice, shiny, neon, glowing, fun, fruity. And we're going to be going through a number of different techniques. Some for the graphics themselves and how we build those up and make them look nice and shiny, but also how we deal with the text and the text treatments that we put on that. In part 1, we're going to be looking at the original tile and seeing how we can take a simple shape, add a few sapphire effects, animate it mainly using expressions to create the basis for the rest of our animation. So let's get going. Now we're going to start on our little journey here by breaking down the little different elements that we're going to need. So the first part is about how we create our master tile that we use to create the floor. And there it is. Well, let's hop into it with creating up a new composition. And I'll call this one Electric Tile 1. There we go. And we will make it a width of 1080 by 1080. And 8 seconds, which is going to be the duration of our entire composition. All right. Now I want to base this shape around a triangle. And I'm going to just actually use a star tool. I'm not worried about whether we've got a fill or a stroke on it right now. It's all going to be the same. So I'm going to just hold down the Shift key, just constrain the proportions and keep this one nice and straight, and then make a star there. And because we've created up a new shape layer, if I come into the polystar and open this up and open up the path type, I can still come in and adjust the number of points down to 3. You'll see it's also a little bit off center. That's fine as well. I'm just going to come down into the transform polystar and just recenter that with 0, 0. Still not quite dead center, but that's fine for now. So now I've got my original shape here. I actually want to turn this into a mask path because I want to be able to use this on a different layer. So here's how we do that. So I'm going to right click on Polystar Path and go Convert to Bezier Path. And that now creates a Bezier path for me. Open up that, add a keyframe, have it selected and just copy that keyframe. So far so good. So that's my shape layer. I can just turn off visibility on that. I don't need to worry about that anymore. And I will create up a new solid. And this is going to be my actual triangle. And I will call this one Triangle 1 because we're going to have a few of them. And make this the comp size 1080 by 1080, hit OK. So now I want to create a mask. And it could just be any mask shape at all. So I'm just going to double click on my star tool one more time. And that will create a mask there. Now the secret here is to add a keyframe on the mask path, hit paste, and then that will paste in my triangle data that I had before. I can even turn the keyframes off on that because I don't really need to keyframe it at all. I want to get a little bit more accurate about this. I could double click now on my triangle and just move that down so it's roughly centered in the tile itself. All right, good. So now we have a black shape in the shape of a triangle. It's not really doing anything else. And I'm actually going to take this opportunity just to turn my mask to none here because we don't even really want that mask shape doing anything. So now we start getting fun. We start adding effects and we start doing something. Right, so I'm going to come down to my Sapphire effects, come down to Render and go Zap. And Zap is a cool lightning effect. If we just play back the default values on that, you can see my lightning going very nice, very electric. Now what I can do with Zap is I can change the mode from 2D to 3D or follow path. Now we have our path already created because it's using our mask 1 as the path. And if we play that back now, we get zapping all the way around our triangle. Looking kind of cool. And this can be a fun way to create up electric text. But we don't want anything this electric for this particular project. We want something a bit calmer. So I'm going to start calming everything down. So I'm going to take my branchiness down to 0. So we don't get any of the extra branches there. So we just get the main shape wiggling around. And actually, I don't really want that wiggle to be that much. I'm going to take my wiggle down, not quite to 0, because then we get 0 animation. We don't get any animation at all on there. So I'm going to take it to maybe 0.2 or something. 0.1. 0.14, something around about that sort of range. We can experiment with this as we need to. And now I can change up things like the wrinkle amplitude and the curve amplitude. So if I turn this down for a second, the wrinkle amplitude says how much wrinkles we have in our shape, how far away it goes from our shape. And I'm going to stick pretty close to our shape actually. So take our wrinkle amplitude down quite far, again, probably around about 0.25. And the curve amplitude sort of curves us away from our original shape as well. So I want to keep this very triangular, very straight. So the curve amplitude is down to 0. I might even touch the wrinkle amplitude up just a little bit more. Now I can take my speed down, maybe something like that. You see by default the zap already comes in with a glow. I don't want that because we're going to be doing a ton of glowing later. So I'm going to turn my glow brightness all the way down to 0. So really what we've got here is just an interesting sort of wiggling of our shape. Might even take the wrinkle amplitude up just a little bit more. So let's create up our first color. And I'll just take a red to start with. Okay, not looking too interesting yet. Never fear, we will very shortly. And I'll take my width up. And we are going to have to be adjusting this width quite a bit as we start to pile on a few more of the effects. I can even sort of vary the width up a little bit as well. So we haven't just done a regular stroke around the entire triangle. Right, so now we have our wiggly triangle. Excellent. And this might not look like much now, but this is going to become the basis for our entire floor. And that sort of neon looking floor. So we're going to add a couple more effects onto this to give it that sort of glassy tube look. And the first one I am going to do is come into Sapphire again and go Stylize, Emboss Glass. And this gives me a sort of, kind of glassy look from the default. And we can change things like the direction. We're going to need to tweak this up a little bit, because this isn't really what we're going for quite here. Okay, let's just move our light over to the tip-ish of the triangle there. And let's try and make this a bit brighter so we can actually see what we're doing. Turn that to about 1.7. There we go. And we can use the bump scale to adjust the texture on this. You can see if I crank this up really high, we get this cool liquidy type of texture. I really like this. We're not going to use this exactly now, but remember that for later. So I'm going to bring this to around about 0.6. We'll just get a little bit of bumpiness. Not too much. So that's the, before and after. So you can start to see what we're getting there. And I'll change my bump threshold up just a little bit. Just so we don't get all of these little bumpy edges down the bottom there. I like that for some effects, but maybe not right on this one. Now, the bump smooth is a fun one. Because the bump smooth, check out what happens as we animate this up. It starts to feel a little bit like whatever's inside that tube is moving around. And I like that effect. In fact, I like it so much, we're going to animate it. Okay, so I'm going to come to the start here. And I'm going to take my bump smooth all the way down to 0. I'm going to keyframe that. And I'm going to come back half a second in, actually about 10 frames in, 12 frames in, that's fine. And I'm going to take my bump smooth up just a little bit. Maybe take it to 30 or something. 26, that looks fine. So it just sort of moves in like that. Okay, so that's animating in. So we're going to animate it back and forth. Now I don't want to keyframe all of that because keyframing all of that is going to take a lot of time. So I'm going to hit the U key just to show me the keyframes I've got here. And we're going to add an expression. And I think I've said this in previous tutorials, but if you're not using expressions for doing a lot of your repetitive keyframing work, you're sort of missing out. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to use the library down here. I tend to misspell things. And I'm going to come to my property, loop out, and it's going to say type, cycle, and number of keyframes. This is a nice little default one. I don't really have cycle, so I'm going to delete everything here after cycle. Okay, and the type we want is going to be ping pong. So we're going to ping pong it back and forth. So right, ping pong, close the inverted commas, and add a closing round brackets. Enter on the number pad. And now we ping pong back and forth, getting a little bit of life into our Emboss Glass. Cool, so let's come in where we can actually see something around about here. And we'll look a bit more at the highlight brightness, highlight size, distort amount, and in fact, all of this other stuff when we've added in another effect over the top of this. Because this is looking interesting, but it's not giving me that glassiness that I really want. So I'm going to add another effect over the top of this. And it's going to be a distortion effect. And it's going to be warp puff. Let's turn off the visibility of the mask on that so you can't see that anymore. And warp puff puffs stuff up or shrivels it back. That's a very underrated little effect. Okay, so let's just reset my puff. There we go. And I'm going to take the amount down. We only want to puff it a little bit. So 0.1 should be enough there. And as I take the smoothness down, you can start to see that at sort of the lower levels, the lower values, we get this kind of really nice distortion, this sort of stringification almost of our triangle. So before, after. Now what's interesting about the warp puff is as I start to change the rotate warp direction, we get this effect that looks like, maybe a light is crossing over onto our shape. So we get these sort of light things playing around. And this is an interesting way of animating this stuff up. But I don't want to hand animate this because I don't know how fast I want things to go yet. So what I'm going to do is add another expression onto my rotate warp direction. So Alt or Option, click on the stopwatch, and I'm going to go time times 10. So this is just creating stuff up based on the time rather than any sort of fixed values. I think we can probably go a bit faster. I'm going to go time times 30 maybe. Yeah, there we go. But how do we get this going from here to here as we had in our original? Because obviously we don't want to see the whole thing all at once. Now Zap has a way of offsetting our path. It also has a way of changing the length of our path. So what I want to do is find a length that I like. So it's probably around about 0.14. That's fine. And we can just chase this around using the start offset. And again, I don't want to add keyframes manually for this. I just want to let After Effects do all the hard work for me. So with the start offset, if I just Alt click or Option click on the stopwatch again, create another expression down the bottom here. If I just did time, that's going to work out fine for the first second because it goes around from 0 to 1 in the first second, and then it just keeps going up. The start offset has a max value of 1. So it doesn't really matter where we are in the timeline. As soon as we go past the first second, it's going to have offset itself off screen. So we've got this value of the time, but I'm going to use another expression to take away the seconds part of the thing to just leave us with how close we are from 0 seconds to 1 second. So I'm going to go time minus JavaScript math floor. This value is always rounded down. So if I go math floor time, that's always going to give me the sort of rounded down version of this time. So it's always going to take away the whole seconds as we have here. So now as I play this through, the value here is never going to go above 1 because it's always going to be minusing the number of seconds and just leave me with the remainder. And we could go in and we could animate up the length as well. Come down onto the length here. I'm going to keyframe this up. So when we're at the end, let's take the length to about 0.25. That's cool. And when we're at the beginning, we'll take the length down to 0. Might make that grow a little bit faster. And maybe not exactly 0, maybe 0.1 or 0.03. There we go. Why not? There we are. Excellent. This is another one that we could do the loop out expression. So alt click on the stopwatch, come in, property, loop out. And here I'll just keep the default version, so the cycle. So it's always going to start at 0, go up to 0.25. So we have our dancing little shape. All right. So now we need to fill out the triangle a little bit more. And I'm just going to duplicate up this triangle with Control or Command D. And I'm just going to change up a couple of these values. So I'm going to take my zap color, change that to a cyan. I'm going to come into my Emboss Glass, change up the scale a little bit, and change up the threshold, just to get rid of that grey that we were getting before. Keep everything else the same. Yeah, I'll keep everything else the same. And let's set my blend mode to screen to see how that's looking. All right. And maybe change my puff now up a little bit, change the smoothness up here as well. Now, because I've got everything working as expressions, if I hit UU, we come down to the timeline and we can expand the timeline up a little bit here. Because I've got everything set up as expressions, what I can do is I can easily change any bit of this and we'll start to get a different type of animation. So like the rotate here, instead of time times 30, I can do time times 20. And I could even just come in and maybe just sort of hit R to rotate this and rotate it 120 degrees. So we've got this sort of offset a little bit. Maybe I'll change up the length a little bit. I think the length is too much there. There we go. And let's just do that another time. So just duplicate that up with Control D. So triangle 3, come in again, change the zap color, have a little yellowy one, maybe a bit more orange. We'll see in a second. Or maybe even go purple on this one. And we'll do exactly the same as we did previously. So hit UU to bring up all of our values that we can change. The offset's the same. Bump smooth, I'll change up. Because all of our animation is pretty much reliant on expressions. Just kind of makes a huge difference to the effect that we get. And we'll do one more. Triangle forward, do the same thing, UU, and just tweak up a couple of these settings. So time times, what should we have? Going a bit slower. Bump smooth. Change the color, zap color to another kind of orangey red, maybe yellow. Actually, no, like a big bright cyan. Yeah, that's the one. And just tweak up like the bump scale, bump threshold, all of that fun stuff. Basically just the stuff we've been doing before. Let the expressions do all the hard work. And again, hit R to change the rotation and change that to 240. I might even change this. There we go. So we've got a few different colors going on. All right, you'll have noticed that now our shapes aren't all in exactly the same place. The reason for that is very simple, because if I turn on the mask shape there, you'll actually see that our mask itself and our anchor point aren't in the same position. We really want the anchor point to be in the center of our triangle, or at least close to it, which is really around about there. I'm going to change the same thing. Actually, I'll change triangle 2 and 3. They've got the same problem and the same anchor point. So let's just manually move those in there. Now, this definitely wouldn't have been an issue if I'd have done things properly right from the start. But, there's always a little bit of improvisation and creativity that goes on. Let's just move those into place. There we go. That's looking better now. And you can play around with this a little bit and try and get the look that you want. And we're just sort of experimenting until we get it into a stage where it's kind of filling out the area a little bit. But it's still not looking like a lot. And I know we're running quite long on this particular part, but this little trick is going to help sort of tie everything together. And it makes everything look better always. I'm going to come in, I'm going to add a new adjustment layer. I'm going to come into my adjustment layer and I'm going to go to my Sapphire builder and go into S Effect. And I'm going to use a preset. And this is a preset that I built in a previous tutorial called Building a Bigger, Better Glow. And I'll have the link down in the description as well. And this just turns everything into something that looks a lot cooler. And this is just the Sapphire Glow. And I'm going to be using this effect quite extensively in the main project. But it's always nice to see just how it's going to look, sort of previewing out there. So we're taking something that looks a little bit weird and funky, and we're going to start to give it a lot of new life just with the default settings that we have on that particular preset. And this here is going to be the main building block that we're going to be using for our floor coming up in part 2. And I'm going to start winding down part 1 now. In part 2, we're going to be taking our tile that we have here and creating a 3D rolling floor without using any 3D at all. And we'll also see how a judicious use of free lens can substitute for doing any 3D camera work as well. Thanks for sticking with me so far. My name is Ben Brownlee from Boris FX, and this has been part 1 of creating trendy neon 80s graphics with Boris Sapphire. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, you know where to put them in the comments below. If you want to download the project files or the presets that we've used in this particular exercise, they'll also be in the description as well. If you're enjoying it so far, don't forget to hit the like button and join us at borisfx.com for all the latest news and tutorials for all the Boris FX products.